Hedvig. What is your beverage for this episode?
Chamomile tea because I had so much coffee today.
Very nice.
I need to. And I also have a cup of coffee.
Wait, you can't. I have the antidote to the poison, and I'm also drinking
the poison. Yeah, because now, because of this, I can drink more of this.
Imagine how bad off you'd be if you only drank the coffee. Hello and welcome to this special bonus patron episode of Because Language, a show about linguistics, the science of language. My name's Daniel Midgley. Let's meet the team. Last time, I asked our listeners for ideas for intros, and we got some.
I have not. This is genuinely new to me. I want everyone listening to understand that whatever reaction I give is an authentic reaction because I have not seen what these are.
It's always an authentic reaction from you, Ben. This idea came from Sonic Snedgehog on our Discord server, who suggested looking up our names in Urban Dictionary and reading what it says.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. This has been done to me by many a student, but I look forward to the inevitable burns.
Okay, here we go. Hedvig is the coolest person ever. She is the best friend you could ever imagine, and when you meet her, you will love her forever. Hedvig is a best friend for life, and that was written by Ugly Bitch 666.
Wait.
It's Hedvig Hiergaard.
Okay, sorry, I was just stunned. So, I'm in an example sentence in Urban Dictionary.
You are well defined.
So I don't know if you're familiar with this, Headers, but the way Urban Dictionary and names work is there are basically two types of name definitions. One where someone who has your name has clearly gone on and given just the most ridiculously laudatory definition, as you just experienced, or what I suspect I'm about to experience, which is someone who really hates a Ben jumps on Urban Dictionary and just lays it out.
I had no idea about this. Oh, interesting.
Look.
I'm keen to hear yours.
You should look up your own name. It's really fun. Okay. Ben, the duck overlord. He can perform mind control on ducks of all kinds. And that was written by Creamer. It's Ben Ainsley.
I will take it. In all of the D&D skills and feats that I could have landed with, I feel like I could take some really interesting directions with duck telepathy. So,
yeah,
duck telepathy I have and I enjoy. They call me the Drake.
Ooh.
I just like how you can perform mind control on all kinds of ducks, not just one kind.
Yep, Muscovies, Indian runners, the whole gamut.
What are they called? Wood ducks?
Decoys?
Wood ducks, yep, even fake ones.
Yeah. What's your secret? Is it bread?
No, my secret is... No, I can't think of a good joke for that. The only thing I know about ducks is the horrendous sexual practices that they engage in, and figured that was not a good direction to take that particular joke. So I offer counselling services to ducks that want to behave better. And they take me up on it. I'm like the Gottman Institute for ducks.
And also, you should not feed birds bread if you can avoid it.
Yeah.
I've read conflicting reports on this because I've read that if times are hard, a little bit of, not too much bread, but a little bit of bread can fill their tummies up a little bit. But you don't want to.
That's not what we want, though. Okay. Nature decides. You got to be all like Ian Malcolm on it, right?
You got to be more nutritional values as well.
You did know that ducks have a corkscrew penis.
Yeah, I think that's what Ben was referring to. But not only do they have a corkscrew penis, I think they have it because don't the female ducks have decoy vagina ends?
I feel like we can move on. Maybe we should introduce our guest.
Yes, we should introduce our guest.
That's something that I'm feeling.
Yes, I also concur.
Thanks, Sonic Snedgehog, for that idea. Everybody else, you know what to do. Write us some intros, hop onto Discord, or send us an email, hello@becauselanguage.com. We have a very special guest co-host. It's Dr. Rikker Dockum of Swarthmore College. Hello.
Howdy. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Now, on Twitter, you are at Ty101. Is there a story there?
Yeah, it's one I actually it's podcast related. I wrote a newspaper column way back in the early days of when I was on Twitter for a defunct newspaper. And then that turned into podcast appearances under that same name. And so it just kind of stuck. So it was Thai 101. The newspaper was the Phuket Gazette in Phuket, Thailand. And
wow.
So I wrote a sort of, second language learner oriented column for that English language, a small English language newspaper, teaching people various tips and tricks about learning Thai as a foreigner living in Thailand.
And we also should acknowledge that on this most auspicious of days that you have joined us when we are recording this, it's actually your birthday. Happy birthday.
Yay.
Thank you.
So I would like to know how to say happy birthday in Thai, please.
Sure. Yeah. It's Suk San Wan Good. Suk San. Suk. So it's a unreleased velar stop. Suk San.
Suk San
is the happy part. And one good.
One
so
good.
That's one and then good with an unaspirated K.
Is the D a retroflex?
Ga.
No, it's not. There's a unaspirated K. So it's like unaspirated K, then something sort of centrally like a ram's horn, and then an unreleased T at the end. So one good.
One
Far out.
Good.
So what you're hearing is the K. But yeah, it's anyway, I'm probably overemphasizing the phonetics of it. One good. There's an unreleased T at the end. That's hard to hear.
Good.
Got it.
Good.
I'll
send you the IPA. I should have prepped. I'll send you the IPA.
That's okay. Thank you so much for
that should just be on like business cards. By the way, on the one day a year it's my birthday, here's the IPA for how to say happy birthday in a language you don't know, and I do. Thank you.
Well, if you have any Thai friends on Facebook or whatever, the most common way for people to say it besides that is just HBD, the English letters. So HBD is there's a lot of these, kind of like the BBQ principle, except it gets extended to things that a lot of English speakers may not have seen before.
HBD. I like that. HBD.
There'll be a lot of HBDs on my Facebook wall today.
Yeah.
Nice.
There we go.
So what kind of research do you do? What's your work in these days?
So I work in a variety of things related to Southeast Asia. So historical linguistics, particularly historical phonology. So I study how tone systems evolve and develop. I'm particularly interested in both the specific scenario for like the language family that Thai belongs to, which most specialists call Kra-Dai, but also known as Thai Kadai. And I'm also interested in like the regional typological, like what exactly happens? How do we get tone as an aerial feature?
Yeah, tone is really interesting because it's notoriously people say at least that it's hard to reconstruct backwards into a tree, and that it is doing a lot of things that are more like contacty and horizontal, but we don't really know, and we don't know how these things work. So it's a very cool area of research.
Yeah, that's literally my jam. You're making me grin here because I wrote a whole dissertation about exactly what you just said, which is not to imply anything, but why has it been so tricky, and what can we do to overcome the historical trickiness of using tone and reconstructing tone? So yeah.
All right. We're going to be talking about the latest news stories and the latest work in language, and we'll be addressing a recent controversy as linguists are considering the work of one Herbert Paul Grice. His work in pragmatics is well known to every Linguistics 101 student, but there's some question about how useful or how applicable it is, so we are going to report the controversy, and you can draw your own inferences.
I don't know ways. Is the person we're talking about, does he talk about inferences? Is that what's going on here? Oh, you absolute wanker. Look at you. You're the person who laughs at a Shakespeare show, not because things are funny, but because you want other people to see that you understood the joke.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Does the microphone pick up my knowing dad joke smirk or no?
It's all going on Zoom. So you are listening to this now because you're a patron. So thank you for being a patron. You're helping us keep the show ad-free for everybody else and just keeping it going. If you're not a patron and you're listening later, go ahead and sign up. Support the show. There are some great rewards depending on your level, like bonus episodes, hanging out with us on Discord, and listening to me cracking esoteric linguistic jokes.
Yeah, so there's tiers to the prizes.
Yeah. Yeah. I should say about the Discord that I'm not always as active on Discord as maybe I think I should be. But it's because we have time zone issues. And then like a lot of people say a lot at the same time. So I don't know what to respond to. But if you actually tag me, if you say like, Hedvig, you said a very bad thing in the recent episode, or like, I agree with you on that, then I'll make sure to pay attention to that. Because sometimes when it's just... we have so many people and they're all so lovely and they start talking to each other and then I lose track of what's going on, but it's really nice.
Conversely, if you would like to tag me and then just lavish me with praise, I would also be receptive to that.
He would.
You would you? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
He would.
How unique, how humble of you.
All right, enough of that. Let's talk about something going on lately, the popular social game Wordle, which we have mentioned.
We have.
Yes.
I've tried a few rounds with Aish now. We got a 2.
Oh, two's not luck.
Yeah, I know.
Two's not luck.
I know.
Two's skill.
Two is luck. 2 is luck, according to Hedvig.
3 or 4 is skill.
I've got to also say we were stumped today. We were really struggling. We got to our second guess, and we've got like a lot of yellow and 1 green, but we are thoroughly stumped. We were really struggling.
Okay, interesting.
I haven't done today's. Sometimes when I'm stumped, at least in the Swedish one, it's because it's not a noun or a verb. That usually screws me up. When it's like a greeting or something, like in Swedish it was hello once, and I was like, what's a word with 2 L's that doesn't have an S? And I was like, I can't understand.
So what's going on with Wordle? Why are we talking about it again?
It's been acquired by the New York Times, and while it will stay free for a while, you might want to be exploring your other word game options. So we're going to take a minute and give out our favorite Wordle derivatives.
Oh, yeah, I've heard there's been some puntastic shenanigans going on.
All right, well, Rikker, start us off. What's your favorite?
So the one that I'm addicted to is called semantal. I kind of like how the ul part has become the productive part of this.
Yeah, it is.
And the names get really bizarre, but we have semantal, which is apparently a reference to a semantics Wordle. And so it's quite different. It's not a guessing game that's based on letters. It's just you feed it guesses. And unlike Wordle, it doesn't have a limit of 6. You have an unlimited number of guesses to guess a word. And what it gives you as feedback is the similarity score according to Word2Vec, which is a natural language processing semantic similarity score tool, right? So it's
like
telling
when natural language processors try and do their thing, they basically have like an inner network of stuff, like words that are like other words, and they give it like an arbitrary score. And so you're sort of trying to get down to 0, basically.
Well, up to 100, but yes.
Okay.
What Word2Vec does is the data comes from Google, and so they use a neural net and feed it, sort of impossibly large amounts of text, and then it just determines what words are near other words and what words can slot into the same place as other words in similar sentences. And it develops a relationship between any 2 possible words. So what you're doing is it's telling you the score between whatever you entered and whatever the word is that day. Right. And it's extremely difficult. And I think the best I've ever done was 27 guesses.
Oh, that is good. I got 34
that is really
once.
Good.
That's good.
And yesterday took me 50. And I have definitely given up after 100 or more and just click the button.
Oh,
it's not so cruel that it lets you click a give up button if you want.
Oh,
I did it the other day, and the target word was display.
Okay.
And I got to 47 guesses, and I somehow managed to get to exhibit.
Oh, that's so close, but you couldn't get there.
And then I was like, exhibition, exhibitionist. Exhibits. Like, I was just like, it's somewhere here. Because I'd gotten that museum was close as well. And then finally I was like, what's another word for an exhibit? And I was like, what about display? And I got it. But
that was it.
It sounds like playing I Spy with a child under 5. Where clearly their brain has just been like, I spy with my little eye something beginning with B. And it's like, beetle fur or something, and you're never going to get there.
My big problem with I Spy is that we play it in the car, and the child has picked an object, a stationary object that we passed several minutes ago.
Man with a red hat.
I'm never guessing that.
One thing that I like about it is that, so this happened to me, I didn't realize what time it switched over, and so I played it once at like 8 p.m., And then I woke up the next morning, my time, thinking it was a new word. I played it again, made a different starting guess. And so I got it the first time in 27 and the second time in 81. And it wasn't until about word 77 that I said, wait a minute, is this the same word?
Oh my God.
So
That's so funny.
I don't think that would be possible with a Wordle 6-letter thing. So that's part of the charm to me.
Semantle sounds like a very rageful alternative. Do we have others?
Yes, there is Quordle. You have to figure out 4 words at once, but otherwise it's just like Wordle.
Oh my God. Yeah, I heard about that one. I haven't tried it yet.
When you put down a word, it charts your guesses for all 4 words. And so basically you find yourself either running from word to word or trying to run one down to ground and then trying to go for each one by one, like John Wick or something.
That was a very oblique John Wick reference, but I'll allow it.
How about you, Hedvig?
Yeah, so one that I really like was called Wordle. Wordle. It's the world.
Wordle. Yeah.
So world. Someone else can have a go at this. I don't know, but it's instead of words, it's geography. So you get the outline of a territory or a country, and you make guesses for territories or countries, and you get told how close in kilometers you are.
Yep.
It's really fun. I can really recommend it.
That does sound fun.
It reminds me of that game where you just get an image from Google Maps.
Yes,
Street View.
I played that one.
That was fun.
GeoGuess is great.
Yes, GeoGuess.
One of my students' assistant is like insanely good, and she has just played it so much, so she knows all this like weird stuff. She knows like particular things about the Google Street View car. So she's like, oh, if you see these kinds of shadows and things, then it's this car, and they only use this one in Nigeria, so it must be Nigeria.
That's nuts.
Yeah, and she also knows a lot about signage.
I get a lot of information about signage. My next favorite one is Absurdle.
What's the hook in Absurdle?
It's adversarial Wordle. It tries to make you as wrong as possible. It's Wordle, but it hates you.
Oh, I kind of feel like Wordle already hates me, to be honest.
I guess so. So you make a guess, and if you guess the right word, it'll change to a different one.
Okay.
But one where all the information you got from your previous guesses is still correct. So,
okay. So like anagrammy type stuff.
So if you know that the word ends in O-L-A-R, you'll be like, is it solar? And it'll be like, nope, not anymore. I changed it. And is it polar? Nope, you're now wrong on that one too. So It has to be molar. You've basically got to exhaust every possibility.
Fun.
What it's really doing is it tries to make you as wrong as possible. So when you do your first word, it takes its word list and knocks off all the words that have any of those letters. So today I started with quant, and then I went to using, and it said, nope, no good. And then I said, well, what about beers? And, well, there were no words that didn't have E by that point.
I guess.
So it excluded all the rest. And because it couldn't knock out the E, it just picked a word where E was in the wrong place.
Oh, God. I don't want to play this.
It's terrible.
This sounds
It's great.
bad.
It's great.
I'll give it to Steve because he keeps sending me various ones and they end up taking up too much of my time. Don't tell my bosses and superiors how much time I spend on Semantle.
One of the remarkable things about the Wordle phenomenon is just how many, they're not quite clones, but spin-offs or variants or Wordle-inspired things have popped up in such a short time. Most people probably only discovered Wordle right around New Year's or early January, and only a month later it's been acquired for $1 million+. But also that it just created all this interesting morphological creativity in the naming, but then also everyone thinking of every possible combination they could. My sister, in telling her I would be talking about this topic today, sent me one that apparently there are custom ones where you could just give it a word list now and it'll generate a custom version based on a semantic domain. So she does like lab pathology, and so there's like a lab path Wordle sort of thing that someone made. So anything as specific as you want. So pretty cool.
That's really cool.
I think it's at the perfect crossroads of scratching an itch no one knew we had, right? So like whenever something comes along that does that, we all love it. But then the other thing that it intersects with is being for the right kind of person, an incredibly easy thing to make. And I'm not trying to detract from the people who originally made Wordle, but like I would imagine a first year computer science coding student could probably knock up a Wordle in some pretty simple like Python or something like that. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just ripe for experimentation because anyone who wants to sit in front of a computer for like, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks and like learn basic code could probably knock one out.
Yeah.
Well, funny you mentioned that because I Googled Thai Wordle to see who had done it. Languages like Thai present special problems for any kind of linear word game because it's not a left to right linear system. It's left to right, but it also has vowel diacritics and tone marks above and below, and sometimes something that is a vowel to the left is still pronounced to the right. So it's tricky, but I found videos of someone on, just doing either a Twitch, I can't remember if it was a Twitch broadcast or YouTube broadcast, of themselves coding Thai Wordle. I don't know if it got finished yet, but I watched several minutes of them working on it.
That's
I love
nice.
that.
That's cool.
I love
really
it.
like that.
It's so great.
The only other ones that I could think of were Loodle, where it's only dirty words.
Yeah.
Classic. Everyone's favorite.
Letteral, where you have to guess the letter. Is it B? No. Is it L?
Oh,
no.
God.
What about P? No.
Hey, look, I guess in traditional Chinese, probably a far more comprehensive game.
And you know what? I still love letterpress, which is an old game, but I still love it. So in letterpress, there's a 5x5 grid of letters. And let's say I'm the blue player. So when I use a letter in a big long word, it turns blue. Then it's your opponent's turn and they can turn the letters red when they use it in a word. But, if one of my blue letters is also completely surrounded with my other blue letters, then that letter turns dark blue and it can't be switched.
Okay.
So you're kind of building up territory and trying to make the longest words possible. And it's really fun. And it's called letterpress.
It sounds like
So it's
Othello
Go
and Go. Yeah.
Scrabble.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot like those.
Okay.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Well, you have now enough to play. And if you still don't have enough to play, there will be Wordle Unlimited, which will let you play as much as you want anytime. And that will probably still stay free.
But it's so much fun. I mean, one of the things that's fun about all of these is the fact that it's one per 24-hour cycle and everyone's guessing the same one. I had some friends who didn't understand that. So they, in the group chat, they like, oh, I solved it, and sent like a screenshot of the solution. And we were all like,
Shut up.
Ruining it for everyone else.
like, oh, it's the same for you? Yes.
You jerk. Let's move on to the Grice discourse. So I noticed this popping up, and it's one of those things that I kind of look at and say, do I need to know about this? Is this okay for me to know about, or should I just absorb it through osmosis? Who noticed the Grice discourse?
I didn't because I'm not on linguistics anything. I'm not on the linguistics side of TikTok or Twitter or any of the other places. So this is always news to me.
You should. It's fun.
So maybe we should start with just what Grice is all about.
Okay.
And no dumb linguist in-jokes, Daniel. All right, you're on notice.
Yeah, I don't think that's a reasonable request, Ben.
No. So Grice was a philosopher, pragmatics, linguisty type guy. Some people call him a linguist, some people call him a philosopher or other things. And he said that in conversation, there are 4 basic rules that are at work. And either by following the rules or intentionally breaking them, you can transmit information.
Could we take it back one step first before we get to the 4 maxims? Because the 4 maxims are awesome, but they are bounded by an overarching principle, and that is the cooperative principle. And Grice phrased it like this. He phrased it in the form of something that you should do. It says, make your contribution such as is required at the stage at which it occurs by the accepted purpose or direction of the talk exchange in which you are engaged. So basically what it says is, do the right thing in the way that you're supposed to and when you're supposed to. And the reason I wanted to start with that was because we have this expectation that people are cooperating. When we're having a conversation, we're engaged in a thing that is a benefit to both of us, and so we try to help it along and not be weird.
Right. No, so that is the basic thing, but I also think that you can understand what they're talking about as like, there are uncooperative conversations. And you can identify them as uncooperative because they break these maxims.
Okay.
So it's not saying that like all conversations are necessarily cooperative. We know that that isn't true.
Mm-hmm.
But when they are uncooperative, we can identify them as such because they're breaking these.
Okay.
Right? Because not every interaction is actually cooperative.
Yeah, like today I was, the children were playing hide and seek, and the littlest one hid right near where I was. And pretty soon her mom comes in and says, "Have you seen any puppies around here?" Because they were being puppies. And I didn't want to let on that she was nearby. I guess it was kind of obvious, but I didn't want to let on because, of course, you don't want to be the snitch.
They get stitches.
They do. So I didn't say yes or no because I wanted to be truthful. But what I did was I said, "I've just been concentrating on this computer."
You did an Aes Sedai lie.
A what?
It's a Wheel of Time reference. They're a group of people who, in the world of this fantasy series, who can't tell lies, so they have become masters of making people believe that they have told them something when they have actually not said that thing at all.
That is exactly what I did.
Yep.
I was hoping that my partner would draw an inference that I didn't know, when in fact I jolly well did know.
Yep.
So that was me being uncooperative.
So, wait, I don't know, Ben, you're also a parent. I've babysat children and been around children. I lie to them and their caretakers all the time. Like,
Constantly.
I know normally I would joke here about how ferociously I lie. I'd be really, really sort of dismissive of my parenting dad. But I will admit that I actually try really, really, really hard to never, ever, ever lie to Ellis.
Okay.
And like I practice more or less completely transparent like parenting. Like if he's like, "Why can't we do this thing?" I will like I don't know. Like maybe I've made the wrong parenting choice because I'll say, "Okay, buddy, let's sit down and I'll explain to you why it is we can't do this thing." And he will literally just be like, "Never mind, I don't care." It's just like when he can see like a long explanation coming, he's like, "It's cool, it's fine, don't worry about it." I don't mind.
to be fair,
So I think I've turned him off from connecting to human beings a little bit, which is.
to be fair, I lie to children about inconsequential stuff, not.
Yes, I have a close friend who makes a game of lying to her child in like a very fun, gamey sort of way. So like he'll point at like birds sitting on a power line and go, "Oh no, watch out, birdies, you'll get zapped." And she'll be like, "No, buddy, they're recharging. That's how birds recharge because they got to get power somehow. So that's how they recharge."
Really?
Whereas I don't do anything like that with my son, which I assume makes me like a really boring bank teller of a dad, but I don't know, that's just the like parenting philosophy I arbitrarily chose.
No,
I do that. Like when I had fully bleached hair and it started to grow out a bit, my nieces and nephews were like, "What's your hair color?" And I was like, "It's blonde." And they're like, "But like it's brown." "Yeah, I've colored it." And they're like, just trying to understand. Yeah.
That's like the Calvin's dad principle. Maybe the reference gets more and more dated, but, the classic Calvin and Hobbes comic strip, which every child should know, and I have so far failed to interest my children in. But whenever Calvin would ask his dad something, Calvin sort of, a prototypically terrible child, but in an endearing way. And his dad would tell him these elaborate lies. And so anyway, that's part of the charm of the strip is being a Calvin's dad.
I 100% believe that Calvin's dad was just Waterson. Like, he clearly just drew himself in that comic. I feel it in my bones.
Dad looks like Waterson.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
He does.
Like, an interest in cycling in the 80s when nothing could be less endearing or, like pulling in of viewers. Like, that only a cyclist would do that about themselves.
Okay, so let's get to the Maxims.
Okay.
There are 4.
There are 4. So what they're trying to say is that when someone is abiding by this or not abiding by this, you can infer things about the information besides the informational content that they're transferring. So the first one is you shouldn't be difficult, you shouldn't be obscure, you should be clear. The second one is you shouldn't be ambiguous.
Could we use the actual names? Could we use the names? I think that's going to be helpful to listeners.
I don't know, because like obscurity I think is a bit of a bullshit name. It's actually obscure.
So one of them is the maxim of quality.
Oh, you mean those?
Say what you believe. Yeah, those. Say what you believe to be true and well supported by evidence. The maxim of quantity. Give enough information, not too much, not too little. The maxim of relation, which means make sure that what you say pertains to what's going on in the conversation. And then the maxim of manner. How would you describe that?
Well, that's the clarity one. Be clear. Don't be obscure. But,
okay.
Yeah, you're right. They're called maxim of quantity, quality, relation, and manner. But when you hear those words, I actually don't find them that informative. Like,
yeah, like manner to me sounds like someone from the 1850s being like, make sure that the manner of the tenor of the conversation is always up tempo. It's like, what is it? I don't know what that means.
Right. So for example, with relevance, you assume that when you talk to someone and you ask them, if you ask something like, oh, do you know where the puppy is? And the other person says, I've been concentrating on the computer. You're assuming they're saying, I've been concentrating on the computer because it's relevant to them knowing where the puppy is.
Gotcha.
So
if you're trying to lie without lying, you're using that.
You're using that inference. And if someone says something entirely, like I have a bit of a networky association brain, and my mom does as well. And sometimes other people think that we are breaking the maximum of relevance because they don't know the jumps we're doing.
Yep.
Oh, right.
My partner does this as well. It can be very frustrating for those of us without network hive minds.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I bet.
But you know what? If somebody does seem to break that maxim, you go, I wonder why they did that. Or at least on some level, our brains say, they're probably cooperating, so what they're saying probably is relevant if I can just look for it.
Yeah.
Is this
and then you
the
find it.
No Country for Old Men gas station scene thing? Is that really what we're talking about here?
So that's more adjacency pairs.
Because wasn't the thing in that scene was that Anton Chigurh and the gas station attendant, like Anton Chigurh just was not allowing any of these rules to fly, right? Because the gas station attendant was basically trying to like talk about the weather and all these other things, which sort of, if you follow these rules of like association and clarity and all those sorts of stuff, then it would work. But Anton Chigurh was just like, what? No. What are you talking about?
Well, that's more like the phatic small talk conversation, which like serves a different kind of purpose and is relevant in this way that isn't like informationally as necessarily relevant.
I think what's happening with Chigurh is the proprietor makes a bid to close, and then Chigurh will ask another question. Like, when do you close? Now? Now is not a time. What time do you close?
Yeah, so he goes literal on a lot of stuff. But then when the other guy goes literal, then he goes figurative, and it's just, he doesn't let him out.
That's a good point. Let me give you another example about what happened. This happened with my adult son. He's 27 or something.
Or something.
Or something.
Don't leave that in. That's not a good thing to leave in.
I have to subtract. He said, I went to the zoo yesterday. And I thought that was kind of a funny thing to do because I thought, well, he lives here in town. There must be a special reason why he had to go to the zoo.
Right. It's not a thing that a person just does on a whim usually.
Right. So I said, why did you go to the zoo yesterday? And he said, to look at the animals.
Your son was Anton Chigurhing you.
He was.
Yeah.
So what happened was that I was expecting a certain amount of information. I was expecting the special reason. And instead, he didn't give me that much information. He gave me less information, a boringly obvious reason for going to the zoo.
Right.
Yeah.
All I can say is the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, true.
Well, one of the things you could pick up from Grice's maxims is you could then read into why he was giving you that answer, potentially. You have a framework for analyzing.
Yeah, what's the implication?
What's the implication?
Right.
It could be that he just doesn't want to end. He wants to end the conversation. Now, with
Yeah.
a 20-something son, that's maybe a different thing. But like with a teen, that is a very frequent thing. So I actually use this example a lot when I talk about it with students. Kids come from school. What'd you do today? Stuff. What'd you learn? Things. Stuff. They're giving these intentionally uncooperative answers as a way to say, I don't want to talk about this, or I don't want to talk with you about this. So yeah, there's a sort of framework there.
Oh, if you want to do No Country for Old Men, you have, what's the guy who finds the money? What's his name?
Oh, I can't remember. Sorry, I'm out.
It's not Cole. What is it?
No.
Anyway, he brings home the money and she says, where did you get that? And he says, the Gettin' place.
Yeah.
Which is a way of being vague.
Yeah, so when you have a conversation and things go awry, you can sometimes think, oh, it's because one of these maxims weren't abided by, or the person, like Rikker says, isn't cooperative and for a reason, and you can imply things by that. So you can also flaunt them in a funny way intentionally to produce comedy. So if you listen to comedy, you can sometimes see that the jokes are built on flaunting these maxims in some sort of way and getting you to make an inference that then turns out to not be true and blah, 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 blah. So... Yeah. If you like comedy, then I can really recommend trying to see how the jokes work in terms of these maxims.
I would imagine Who's On First is probably like a benchmark example of this.
I don't know. I don't know all of your guys' I don't know.
I literally played Who's on First for students in intro
really?
linguistics.
Cool.
Yeah, I have them.
there we go.
I either show it to them or have them send it to them as a clip. But yes, it's a case, I think, which it's maybe not an accessible pop culture reference anymore for the last 70 years.
I will maintain, I've played it for a lot of teenagers. They were geniuses. They made like a thing that will stand the test of time, because I still have young people genuinely laughing at that recording.
Wow, that's impressive.
Agreed.
For old comedy stuff. That's really a feat. Yeah,
definitely. Like Bob Hope, not funny anymore. Not to new audiences, but that stuff still gold.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about Grice and what it allows us to do. The Gricean maxims are pretty powerful. But there's been a discussion on Twitter this week.
People hating on him.
A little bit, kinda. There's a tweet thread that you can find if you look, to the effect that the Gricean maxims are for white, cis, Western, able-bodied, neurotypical people, and that these maxims are not really important or special.
Is that true? Linguists in the room?
I think there are places where some of these maxims don't really work the way you expect them to. And I wouldn't say that people don't discuss this. Like, if you go to like the Wikipedia page for this, there's actually a section called criticism that you can read and that you should read. I think you teach it in undergrad because it is an analytical way of thinking about conversation and getting linguist undergrads to like think about conversation as information transfer and things. But to say that it's like universal rules that every rational person do, and that if you don't do them, you're irrational, maybe that's a bit much.
That's definitely a strong way of putting it. I guess I didn't see the discourse as it happened, but I went back and browsed some of the things, and I've forgotten now who made the comment, but various things along the lines of, it's not that they're normative, you're sort of using them as a framework for understanding how people interact, but that said, they are analyzing the framework of a specific culture. And I try to give counterexamples from other cultures when I teach them too, but I can understand this criticism.
What's an example from a different culture, Rikker?
Oh, sure, yeah. The first one that always comes to mind is when I first moved to Thailand. A really common criticism, which can be, is certainly sort of Eurocentric or ethnocentric, is if you ask someone directions in Thailand and they don't know where you're going, they'll give you wrong directions. And so there's the maxim of quality is in a different social place. And so it's more important that you cooperate in the sense of be a cooperative interlocutor. And what you do is you learn that you need to pick up from the way that they give you the information, their degree of confidence in that information. And so you might turn around and immediately ask someone else for directions to the same place.
Whoa.
And so this is really jarring. And so you see a lot of sort of unfortunately insulting and, I would not recommend like forums where white foreigners discuss Thailand in general. I'm not a fan of those kind of places.
I can imagine.
Having before the advent of Twitter as a place to find sort of friends that cut across all kinds of different social strata, I spent some time on those, and they're pretty negative and pretty pessimistic. And so that's a great example of one where they would be saying like, "Oh, look at these idiots who just tell lies all day long to you. How are they lying to my face?" When of course that's an extremely incorrect and wrong way of looking at it. And so I just use this as an example to say, well, that's a different balancing of social values. And Grice is a way that we can analyze why that's different.
That's one of the highest context examples of a high context culture I have ever heard. Right? when I try and explain high and low context cultures to people, I am now going to use that because that blows all of my other examples out of the water.
I was actually going to make the exact same example, but from when I went to China once, where I had the same experience. And I was vaguely aware of this. I knew that when you asked people for help on the street, no one was going to say no. So I was asking for directions, and people kept being like, "Oh yeah, it's further down that alley that way." And I was like, And then, I did that thing of like asking more and more and more people until I got somewhere. But I found it a bit jarring because I was desperate to find this place, and it was disorienting to get wrong information. But I was vaguely aware that this could happen, so I didn't get too uncomfortable. Yeah, no, that's definitely a thing.
You just gotta let go of that white Europeanness and just throw yourself into the mix.
I've also had students from non-Western countries where I've had problems with like assigning people tasks and people say, yes, I will do that on that time. And then that not happening and me being like, I don't think that they are being rude. I think there was some sort of miscommunication problem about how they can tell me that they can't do it and like how to get feedback. So I talked to, this was someone from a specific country and I had a senior colleague from that country. So I asked if we could like get a cup of coffee and be like, how can I communicate so that this works? Because my basic management style is to be like very like subtle and nice.
Well, you're Swedish.
So I try and
but
be
also
like,
you're Swedish, right? Like you come from the land where people will just be like, do the thing now in an email. And that's just like communication.
no, that's more Dutch people. Swedish people are a little bit more polite. Sorry, Rikker.
Never underestimated Swedish. The only way that could have been better is if you took a swipe at the Danes.
I'm 400 years removed from being offended by that. My people,
still, maybe
my people immigrated
something.
far too long ago. All I have is the name left.
No, but so I'll be like, because I have like undergraduate student assistants now, and when they do something a little bit wrong or something, I'd be like, so I understand why you did it, and it's okay, and we'll take care of it. For future reference, like, let me help you, or you can. I'm like, I try to be quite. I try to cushion it a lot, and sometimes in intercultural communication, that means that I don't want them to do it. Almost like it's just like doesn't work.
I love that example, though. That's because that's exactly not just conversation, but that's why businesses in Thailand, like you have these sort of clueless foreign bosses who don't understand that cultures can be different. And language is, one example of ways that in which cultures can be different, but it's kind of the same thing. It's more important that you tell the boss, yes, I will get right on that, even if you have no plans of doing it, because you have to find a better place where you're not in front of your colleagues or they're not in front of your coworkers to tell them no. You can't say no when someone else might expect you to.
We have mentioned white and Western, but there's also neurotypical. I know someone who's neuroatypical who does not get sarcasm. When you do sarcasm, what you're doing is you are breaking the maxim of quality. You're not telling the truth, but you're doing it so obviously that most people would figure out that you're saying the opposite of what you mean, and that's sarcasm. Well, he wasn't able to pick up on those cues, and he hated sarcasm. He said, "Don't do it around me. I can't stand it," because he just didn't get those cues. And so, how applicable is this maxim of quality when there are a whole scat of people who just they're not wired that way. They're not good at picking up inferences that relate to the flouting of that maxim.
Sarcasm is hard even with people who aren't neuroatypical. Like, because in order for sarcasm to work, you need to have an understanding of what is reasonable. So if someone is saying...
It's a fairly nuanced
Yeah.
thing.
Like, I have that thing that I've told before where, like, I misheard my ex-boyfriend saying that he was gonna go downtown and meet his mom at their submarine. He said boat, but I heard U-boat. And then he sarcastically, when I said, "Oh, a submarine, wow." And then he sarcastically said, "Yeah, of course, I'm meeting my mom at a submarine." And I was like, "Oh, wow, that's really cool." Because in my world, people could own submarines. So the sarcasm doesn't work if I think it's reasonable. And as far as I know,
you're making guesses about what's likely. And for you, that was likely.
Exactly. So
it's global navies, Latin drug cartels, and your boyfriend's family. Those are the three groups of people who own submarines.
well, my uncle had his 60th party on a submarine. So
did it go out underwater? Did it dive?
No, we were just like on top. I don't know.
Fair enough.
I don't know. Maybe that's unreasonable. I'm just saying, you have to have a lot of
fair enough.
common ground in order for sarcasm to work. That's why people,
You're
especially
right.
Australians, use it as a way of bonding.
Yeah, we do. And it's quite exclusionary in a lot of ways, and we should probably work on that.
Okay, so we've mentioned a few problems, like they're framed like commandments, do this, when in fact that's not really how it is. They sometimes don't take culture into account, where people do try to cooperate, but cooperation looks different in different ways. And also, they need to take neurodivergence into account. For example, we talk about give the right amount of information or do things in the right manner, when understandings between people of what is the right amount can be widely divergent.
I have a couple of students at the moment for whom the right amount of dinosaur information is somewhere between 20 and 40 minutes.
That's an amazing example.
You know what? I roll up.
That's great.
Like, I straight up roll up for that. I will talk about the Ankylosaurus for a good 8 to 9 of those 25 minutes. Like, I'm there. I'm there for that. But it is not an amount that other neurotypical people would think is a normal, appropriate amount.
Okay, so what do we do? Here are some suggestions. Stop teaching Grice and teach something else instead, like maybe relevance theory, which puts everything into relevance. No, not a fan?
I think if you're going to be in pragmatics or linguistics, it's good to know Grice Maxims for no other reason that they are commonly referred to. Just like how you should know a bit of Chomsky even if he's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But you could do like Rikker said that he does. You could introduce them and say, people thought this. Here are some cases where that doesn't work out.
That does still present them as a normative framework, though, right? Like, if you present it and then you say, oh, and here's like a example of how it doesn't apply, it still kind of makes it seem like this is the thing. And sometimes it's not a thing, but mostly it's the thing. So
when I teach this, I have people look for the maxim around them, and it's not like there's a right or a wrong answer. It's really just saying, look for examples of cooperation and places where your expectation was either met or subverted, or you intentionally subverted. One of the things I tell them they can do is you can intentionally flout a maxim and report the results. See what happens. See how, by avoiding not starting any fights, but avoiding starting fights.
Why did you go to the zoo? To look at the animals?
Yeah. I don't know. So I'm definitely not a pragmaticist. So I should preface by saying that. But there's a whole lot more. So, I mean, Grice maybe lived in an era where he wouldn't have called himself a linguist, but people certainly do sometimes call him a linguist. But a lot of the reason why we know about or talk about Grice in modern linguistics, which I realize modern is needs scare quotes around it, but in current day linguistics, is because of like the work of Larry Horn, who is the outgoing LSA president this year. The Linguistic Society of America gave the talk this year. So Larry Horn further does exactly what one of the suggestions that Daniel made was reduce it down to other things. And so people have since argued about, are there actually only 2 principles at work? Is there actually 3 principles? And so if you're only teaching it like Grice is the only thing you need to know about this, that's definitely bad. And I think you can certainly avoid teaching it as a normative thing.
There was one tweet by @Maureen Cossey that I really liked. They say, your Ling program has failed you if they don't teach basic critiques like, historically, most theory is centered around the practices, attitudes of white cishet men from the US and UK, presenting them as a default state of humanity from which we can derive universal claims. I think that's a good thing to keep in mind. We need to teach that these notions are heavily cultural. Sometimes they break down and they don't include everyone. And then go from there.
And linguistics is far from the only discipline that, like, you could write that statement about so many different fields of knowledge.
I still think Grice is useful, but I really appreciated this pushback.
I think, I'm trying to remember in my undergrad if we talked about criticisms. I don't remember doing it, but I remember thinking that, like, you can imagine cases like in sarcasm where it doesn't necessarily work. We were all taught these like 3 things at the same time. I think Grice, Hockett, and Jakobson's functions of language. And they came to us as these packages of like things we had to memorize for a test. I mean, that's how I perceive them. But all of them are quite old and could be improved upon. I think they're still relevant to discuss and know about. It's good that you know that Grice had 4 maxims and they're there. But I think Rikker has a really good point that like you can nuance it.
Maybe you could just make it Grice's 5 maxims, right? You talk about the 4, and if this is so fundamental and everyone encounters it in like Ling 101 or whatever, right, like super early in their undergraduate degree, you can also use it as the springboard to introduce the critique of the white Eurocentrism of so much of linguistics, right? So the 4 maxims are the 4 maxims, and then the 5th maxim is, by the way, this is a really crusty old white dude, and like so much other stuff you're going to learn, it's all been written by crusty old white dudes, so we should really, really interrogate all the crusty old white dudes who wrote this stuff and see if it is really as relevant as it used to be.
And that one is phrased like a commandment.
Yeah. Thou shalt always question crusty white dudery.
Amen.
But like we didn't do them for Grice, but for Hockett's rules of like how language is defined, we had like a little chart and then did like how many of these boxes does sign language tick? How many of these boxes does Alex the Grey Parrot tick? How many of them does singing in a choir we had? Because it's just fun to see like, is this such a good idea? But I wish maybe we had done that for Grice's Maxims as well.
Yeah, this definitely made me think about ways I can push back or at least make it maximally more clear that
that wasn't me. That
I'll be
was
here all
not
week,
me.
Tip your waitresses. Anyway,
I still blame you, Daniel. You allowed this by establishing a norm. It's still Daniel's fault.
We can make it more clear to students and to anyone we talk to about it that this is not something we're trying to lay down as a commandment. And I think I'm actively looking for ways to do exactly that. So one of the things that I do on the regular is complain about the IPA chart as being Eurocentric, but this gives me a new area to like, okay, I need to look for extra additional new places to find those criticisms.
We're now to some more of our stories, and this one comes from Anna Korzeniowska and a team, published in the Proceedings of the Royal Society B, Biological Sciences. You know, we've been having a lot of stories. We had a story last week about dogs and language and how they understand. What was it about? I've totally forgotten what the story was now.
Oh, God.
So many shows.
Yeah.
We talked about dogs so many times. Dogs. We had the thing about the implants in the guinea pigs. That was gross. Dogs and... Because this one is the one I was thinking of, the pitch size cross-modal correspondence.
Yeah, you posted it on our Discord, actually, so this is really good. So when I am doing sock puppets, or when I'm making animals speak, or when I'm making like objects speak around the house, like let's say that I have a couple of pairs of scissors and one is tiny and one is huge, and I'm amusing my 2 daughters by making them talk. You know, the big pair of scissors will be like, "Hi there, little scissors, how are you doing today?" And the little scissors will be like, "Oh, I'm very good, thanks." And that just makes sense.
Yep.
Because we think of big things as having big, deep voices, being low in pitch. And
it's happening.
Hedvig's got the scissors. All right, come on, do it, Hedvig.
Hello. There you go. Is that it? Is that what I needed to do?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Lots of personality. So we associate those sounds that way, but do dogs? And if they do, that suggests that there's something about this language thing that relies on hardware that a lot of animals have access to. And if not, then we can say maybe not.
I guess it would make sense if they did, or if a lot of, I'm going to go with just mammals first of all, did, because like bigger animals do make deeper sounds.
Yeah.
Right?
And if they don't, then it's weird, right?
Yeah. I mean, I guess you've got the odd exception, like an elephant can blast like a high-pitched note, kind of, but they also make heaps of really deep, rumbly bellows and other things like that. So yeah, I would be surprised if dogs weren't able to make that association a little bit.
And you can just think about the physics of like an orchestra. Like a small flute makes, a piccolo makes higher pitched sounds.
Yeah, you just look at the pipes in a pipe organ, right?
Yeah, or like a violin can make higher notes than a cello. Like that's how physics work and sound waves and tubes.
Okay.
Right?
Well, this team investigated whether dogs had that association. So they showed dogs an object and the object played a sound. And when the object played a sound, the dogs were trained to go up to the object and poke it with their nose or with a paw. Very well. That was the training phase. But then, for the test phase, the dogs were presented with 2 objects, one smaller, one bigger. And then one of the objects would either play a deep note or a high-pitched note, a low-pitched note or a high-pitched note. And sometimes it was what you'd expect. The big object played a low-pitched sound, and then the dog would go to it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the small object would play a high-pitched sound and the dog would go to it. But what happens when it's incongruous, when a high pitch comes from a big object, or vice versa? Did the dogs pick the right object, or did they mess it up?
Well, but hang on. Is the sound emanating from the object itself?
Yes.
Well, obviously they're going to go to wherever the sound's coming from. That doesn't sound like a very good test.
You'd be surprised, because what they found was the dogs did a fine job when it was congruent, but they didn't do a great job when it was incongruent.
So they were confused, suggesting they do detect a pitch congruency.
Yep, just like a human would.
But they were also trained on the mapping, right?
Like, was it a medium-sized dull and a medium-toned note for the training phase?
The training object was a medium-sized thing.
Oh, what is that?
You want to guess?
Oh, I've seen that. It's a cat keyboard. I love that toy. I actually wanted that one. It's really good.
It meows,
yeah.
doesn't it?
Meow, 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 meow.
Go ahead, Vic. Bring in the props.
I mean, it does other sounds, and it makes it's what parents hate. You can push and it makes plays with melodies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you get
That's
it.
very interesting.
It's not very.
I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah. So the idea is, this is the high pitched sound. So what was the Daniel? What did they do?
They did use a mid-size object, and I think they used a mid-size tone as well.
Okay.
Something in the middle.
Jesus.
And then they got to see a big object and a small object, and they heard a high-pitched sound coming from the big object, and they were confused.
That's right. They took longer to respond, and they would often respond wrongly.
Okay, so they can detect pitch. So, it makes sense. Dogs,
Yep.
like many other animals, probably heard big things making deep noises and little things making high-pitched noises, and they've kind of got that hardwired in somewhere.
So they say our results suggest that non-human animals show abstract pitch-sound correspondences, indicating these correspondences may not be uniquely human, but rather a sensory processing feature shared by other species. What do you think?
Checks out to me. I don't see why
Seems
that wouldn't
very
be
reasonable.
true. Can we acknowledge for a second how insane DNA is, just as a concept, right? Just these four molecules bundled together in weird ways can leave it so that an animal will have an association with a big animal or a small animal. What? How
To be fair,
how?
this could be learned behavior from exposure as puppies.
That's
Yeah, these dogs were alive before the experiment, so they were...
fair enough. But I think we can all agree that it wouldn't be a stretch for this to be true.
It's not a stretch. But you know what? It's also, we spend a lot of time thinking about why is language the way it is? And why do we process language the way it is? Well, because of physical realities like the size of your vocal tract, the size of the apparatus. So
Rikker, I wanted to hear Ricker's opinion maybe about pitch and tone and semantics. Is it the case in tone languages that high-pitched things are smaller?
As it turns out, there's a lot of research on the sound symbolism of vowels and how high front vowels tend to be associated with small or high-pitched things, and low back vowels tend to be associated with large things. And this is cross-linguistically robust, and so I think tonal languages also fall into that. So, the words for teeny, itsy bitsy, and large, huge, enormous, etc. But as far as how that plays into lexical tone, that's a great question. One of the things that's tricky the thing that we can reconstruct about how tones change is the categories. If you think of them as bags of words that we can put different semantic things into, we can reconstruct what the bags were like. But the part that's actually the trickiest to reconstruct is what were the pitches? How do pitch contours change over time?
Yeah.
And so, but there's some really interesting, there's a great paper out in Diachronica just this week or last week about another, basically we're trying to figure out what are the mechanisms for how pitches change over time. And so I don't think we actually necessarily know how this ties in yet, but this was Catherine Yang's work, and we're trying to, people are sort of saying, well, how even do these tones change over time as far as their pitch phonetics, as opposed to the categories of what words are included in them. But I would love to learn more about this. You've tapped into the trickiest part of historical tones, which is what the heck do pitches do? But there are some really interesting things where, of all of the historical pitches in the family I work on, the only one that's robust, where we actually think we know what the phonetics might have been hundreds of years ago is the high pitch, is like a high or high rising pitch. So it makes you wonder is there something salient about why that would be a more stable category over time? I don't know, but you've just given me an interesting idea. I'll have to think a lot more deeply about it.
But like, regardless of reconstruction, I'd be interested to know, just from your experience of learning tonal languages, regardless of the history, is there an association between high tones and, in case of nouns, concrete nouns, small objects, and low tones and big objects?
That's a good question. One that I don't know the answer to, but I could speculate. But I feel like someone might have worked on it. I wonder if they have, but I have not noticed that. But yet another thing that I'm gonna look into.
That'd be fun. Yeah.
Okay, well, this one is work from Constantina Margiottudi and a team, published in Proceedings of the Royal Society B. We know that big things make big sounds and small things make small sounds, but we're also aware of the Kiki Booba effect. Woohoo! We know that if you have two made-up words, Kiki and Booba, and you have to choose which word represents a spiky shape and which one is the blobby shape, Kiki's the spiky one, and this is a robust result across a number of languages. But earlier in 2019, this team, headed up by Constantina Margiottudi of Freie Universität Berlin, they found that if you give the Kiki Booba test to great apes and you get them to choose to associate sounds of made-up words with objects on a screen, they don't do it. They don't do very well. But then they wondered, what if we used an ape, a primate, that knew something about human language? Well, there's only one. You know who we're talking about.
Is this Coco?
No, Coco passed away a number of years ago. Who's left?
Coco's child?
Bubbles, Michael Jackson's chimpanzee.
It's not. No, it's a bonobo.
And Nimchimsky is a chimp, not a bonobo.
No, sadly passed. Yes.
Wait, what are all of them called?
Okay, lay it on us.
We don't know.
It's Kanzi.
Oh, I did know that. I did know Kanzi existed.
Kanzi's like 40 now. So here's the thing. Kanzi started research ages and ages ago by pressing buttons, that were arbitrary. But he's really good at understanding spoken language now, after so many years. And he's able to pick out the correct object on the screen, boop, if he knows the object, 87% of the time, which is really good. So he can do this. So then they took Kanzi, with all of his familiarity with language, and gave him round shapes, spiky shapes, on the screen at the same time. You can touch either one. And then non-words that sounded either spiky or blobby. No good. Wasn't able to associate Kiki Booba. Now, what do you make of that?
N equals 1?
Yeah.
Possibly.
We did.
But I mean,
we just need more.
Didn't we cover that paper a while ago, also finding that Kiki Booba was still robust regardless of script? So it's not a thing. It is something about the sound.
It's not that the letter K looks very sharp and spiky, so that's why.
And also, Kanzi was hearing the thing.
Yes, that's right.
So can't be anything with that. I don't know. Yeah, maybe N equals 1. And we have exceptions, like Rikker was talking earlier about like big things having low open vowels, but we also have the word big, which has a high front vowel, and small.
And small, which has...
So there are... It's the general pattern, so maybe you need more data points and more primers to test on to find something. Maybe there's so many exceptions that individuals can... I don't know.
Maybe we found the line. So maybe the pitch thing... Yeah, animals can totally do that. But when it comes to picking out associations with sounds, not as easy. Like, that's just a step beyond their ability. Maybe?
Isn't it also the case that, like, different animals... I know that children, when they're small, they have a differently shaped vocal tract than adults. Their whole larynx, I think, is, like, higher up. So they don't make sounds... They can sound like adults, but they don't make them in the same way as adults. And there are sounds that they can't fully make, I think.
Yeah, your larynx drops, and then you sound like an adult.
Yeah. So... one of my phonetics teachers one time spoofed us by playing a sound and asked us to transcribe it, and we found it really hard. And it turned out it was a dog. And
how was it a dog?
It was a very short sound clip. Dogs make a lot of noises. It sounded like speech.
I love you.
No,
Yeah.
It
I've
sounded
seen
like
a lot of TikToks like that.
It sounded like a foreign language. It didn't sound like English.
Wow, okay.
He was giving us foreign languages all the time with like people who had creaky voices and had smoked for 40 years. So like, again, it was totally within the realm of possibility that what we heard was a human, but we couldn't transcribe it because the dog has a very different vocal tracts, so can like make different sounds. So maybe there's something about that. I don't know. I'm grasping at the straw. Someone help me.
Yeah, me too. I don't know what to think. Rikker, what do you reckon?
Well, I'm just still reeling from the fact that people pronounce it booba and not boba, which is how I learned it, and I'll never get used to it. And in fact, the pun in the title relies on it being pronounced boba.
Variation is everywhere. What was the title?
Bonobo Kiki. So it's a pun on bonobo, and so it does. Anyway, this is a totally irrelevant sidetrack. But I know people say booba, but I can't get used to it.
Bono Booba Kiki. That's unfortunate because the title should obviously have been. You ready? This will be my last joke. No Booba Kiki for Bonobo Kanzi. Thank you.
Bonobo no Kiki is better.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, my title was comedy gold.
Because it also sounds like, and I hate this, but it also sounds like Me, Tarzan, You, Jane. Like,
all I can think about is how disappointed they were that they didn't get the title it more like Bo Yesba, am I right? So they were recovering from their disappointment with their findings and had to grasp at the right pun in the title.
I'm glad that a negative result got published.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's positive.
It's always good when that happens.
Let's cut to a track, and this one's from the new Bonobo album.
I see what you did there.
I miss playing tracks, you know? Well, that's it for our stories, but let's just get to one comment from Teal on Facebook. Teal says, just listening to the new mailbag, we talked about words and the words of the year, and one of the words was stimmy.
Yeah.
Teal says,
I still don't like it.
Stimmy is pretty solid in neurodivergent communities for a thing that you stim with, like fidget cubes or squeezy balls. I, for one, have a whole bowl of stimmies in my living room for kids and adults who are feeling restless and so on. Isn't that nice?
That's way less gross. I really
think so too.
Find that a lot less alarming.
Grabbing a stimmy, I can do that.
No, you ruined it again.
I feel
it's
better
bad.
about that. Rikker Dockum, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. How can people find out what you're doing?
Well, I'm on Linguistics Twitter at Ty101. That's, where I like to keep it a little informal. You can also read about my research. I have the blessing or curse, I don't know, of having a uniquely unhideable name. So you can find me on the internet. I cannot hide on the internet. I don't leave reviews of products because even neither R. Dockum nor Rikker D is anonymous in any way, shape, or form. So anyway, you can find my website. You can send me an email if you're interested in things I work on. And thanks for having me.
It was our pleasure.
I just noticed that I don't follow you. I thought I did because you appear so often in my feed from like other people liking or commenting or doing something. So I thought I was following you.
Clearly the algorithm just knows you too well.
Yeah. So now I have.
We have a lot of mutuals.
Yeah. So now I have followed. Probably.
And our paths crossed in person once when I was in Canberra.
Yes.
Oh, you've met. How cool.
Yeah.
Well, that puts you one up on me. I've never met Hedvig.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We can't all be so cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again. This has been awesome. Okay, it's time for the reads, and I put myself first.
Yeah, I noticed that. What a bit of a switcheroo.
Yeah, you gotta... All right, so everybody, thanks for listening to the show. As always, if you don't know how to find us, you can find us pretty much everywhere on every conceivable social platform. We're Because LangPod everywhere, including TikTok, where you'll find us doing quick videos of show excerpts. If you want to record something for us to play using SpeakPipe, it's on our website. Just go there with your microphone on and start recording something. We've got people doing that. It's really cool. Or a regular old email at hello@becauselanguage.com. If you want to help the show, you can do stuff like you can send us ideas for your show, articles, stories, words of the week, whatever, we'll take them. You can recommend us to friends and even to people who are not friends. Dustin of Sandman Stories does that, and by the way, his podcast, Sandman Stories, is a really good listen, relaxing, great stories, lots of fun. And you can write us a review in all the places where reviews can be left. Thanks to all of you for doing all that stuff. We really appreciate you making the show what it is.
And you can also, I realize we never really say this, but we are Because LangPod on Twitter, but Daniel and I are also on Twitter ourselves. So you can go and find Rikker, you can find me, Laser Hedvig, and you can find Daniel at...
You know what? I don't think T. Daniel Midgley is a very good place to find me, but Because LangPod is better. If you like the language me, go for Because LangPod. The other one is just like me complaining about politics and talking about Tesla. So, that's kind of the less worthy me. That's the me where I'm not as nice.
He does talk a lot about Tesla.
I do?
Yeah.
Gotta build that brand.
Yeah.
I sure do. I'll say it again. I'm a Tesla stan. I'm not an Elon stan. Just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
And that's only gotten more true over time.
Okay. But you can also follow Because LangPod, which Dana uses a lot as well.
Yes, please.
Anyway, this is a special bonus episode for our patrons. It might come out later for all of our listeners as well when we remember to do that, because we tried to set a timeline, but we couldn't hold to it because that's fine. Our patrons make it possible for us to do the show without ads, make transcripts so that you can search and find when it was that we talked about Tesla or whatever it is. Shout out to the entire team of Speech Docs who are doing a great job on our transcripts, and also follow me on Twitter and like a lot of my tweets, even when they're in Swedish, which is very cute. So
really fast, too.
Yeah. So I want to give a special shout out to all of our top patrons. They are Dustin, Termy, Chris B, Matt, Whitney, Chris L, Helen, Udo, Yak, Pharaoh, Cat, Lord Mortis, Elias, Larry, Christopher, Andy, James, Nigel, Meredith, Kate, Nasrin, Aisha, Sneaky Lemur, Moe, Steele, Andrew, Manu, James, Roger, Rian, Colleen, Glyph, Ignacio, Sonic Snedgehog, Kevin, Jeff, Andrew from Logophilius, Samantha, Zoe, Kathy, Rachel, Cheyenne, Felicity, Amir, Andy, Tim, and Kate B, who contributed a large amount one time, which we really appreciated. And our latest people who have boosted is Your Friend and Laura. And then our newest patron is Some Sandwich.
Yeah, they are at the listener level because they like listening.
That's lovely.
Our theme music has been written and performed by Drew Kraplianov, who's a member of Ryan Bino and Didion's Bible. Anyone who lives in Perth, by the way, Didion's Bible has a gig coming up, so if you wanted to check out the people who make the music for the podcast, just go onto the internet and find out what that upcoming gig is. I'm sure you'll be able to. Thanks for listening. We will catch you next time, because language.
Good job. Pew.
Hey, Rikker, I like your Abbey Road Zoom background.
Indeed. It's a funny sort of cultural shibboleth about who recognizes this and comments on it and who doesn't recognize it or says something like, why are you in the middle of a road? So it's,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
That's interesting. It's hard to imagine people not knowing the Abbey Road cover, but that's...
But I saw someone tweet the other day something where they tried to use a meme that was based on the first Pirates of the Caribbean movie, and the students didn't know it. And then I was like, right. Okay.
So if that sort of bakes your noodle in a class full of year 10, so 15-year-old kids, I showed the opening sequence to The Dark Knight, like Christopher Nolan's Batman movie, the second one.
The bank robbery.
And it's great. It's a great opening scene, like the Joker introduced, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, hey guys, just out of interest, like how many of you have actually seen this movie? Only, I would say, about a third of the hands went up. And that movie came out in 2008. Like, kids these days, y'all, kids these days.
But like, how old would they have been? They've been like 2, 3?
But that doesn't matter.
Maybe it speaks to the point that Nolan's Batman films have left no cultural footprint.
That is
shut your
untrue.
dirty mouth. You shut your dirty mouth, all right?
I have bonobos in my Planet Zoo. I just need to say that.
Do you? They're awesome.
They're awesome.
You should.
Do they have a lot of sex?
Weirdly enough, they have about the same amount of sex, I would say, as my pandas, which doesn't seem
that
reasonable.
Is not a realistic... So clearly this is an arcade game, not a sim. That's all I'm willing to say.
It puts pressure on the pandas.
The pandas
I've got to say,
are having more sex than I thought. And they're also trying to inbreed. And I'm like, I thought this would not be a problem with you guys.
Anyway.
Moss. Llewellyn Moss. If you said Llewellyn Moss, you get a point.